Welcome back, everyone. This is part 4 of our series looking at AJ's Juice's paper, Iran's Poisoned Arrows, part 4. In part 3, which is very important, we saw Benjamin of Tudella's report on his visit to Baghdad, and now AJ Juice looks at some of the figures mentioned in the academies at that time. He says that in Baghdad, the Jewish leadership was divided under 10 academies, mimicking the 10 tribes of Israel. Of these leaders, we should be able to trace some of their lineages. Chief Rabbi Samuel, the son of Eli, head of the academy, Gaon Jacob, is a Levite, Quraysh, who traces his pedigree back to Moses. Rabbi Hananiah, his brother, is the warden of the Levites. Rabbi Eleazar, the son of Zemach, is the head of the order, reaching back to Samuel the prophet, the Korahite, again Quraysh. They are the temple musicians. You've seen a pattern here. The people who are working in the academies are essentially Quraysh, according to A.J. Juice. Rabbi Abraham, who is called Abu Tahir. Does that name ring a bell for any of you? We'll come to him in just a minute. Rabbi Zakeh, the son of Bostanay the Nasi. The latter is buried at Pompadita, Baghdad. While the first 3 are out of reach for now, the last 2 have a curious background. So we're curious to see what this background is of these 2 important leaders in the academies. There is one Abu Thair of historic significance, Abu Tahir Suleiman al-Janabi. If Abraham is an ancestor of his, then we have the Carmatian governor sitting at the table. This is the guy who stole the black stone at Mecca and returned it broken to Kufa. He had thought of one Abu al-Fadil al-Isfahani, a royal Sassanid descended from Isfahan, as the Mahdi, reinstated Zoroastrian fire temples and changed the Qibla to Isfahan. So, who is this person, Abu Tahir Suleiman al-Janabi? Well, according to Wikipedia here, he reigned from 923 to 944, so roughly 2 centuries before the visit of Benjamin of Tudela to Baghdad. He was a Persian warlord and the ruler of the Carmatian state in Bahrain, who in 930 led the sack of Mecca. Now, we put Mecca in inverted commas here because obviously we're dealing with a tendency to conceal history here. And it's not just for the 7th century or 8th century. This tendency seems to have continued onwards when there's uncomfortable things that need to be hidden. So, just leaving that aside for a moment. A younger son of Abu Sa'id al-Janabi, the founder of the Carmatian state, Abu Tahir became leader of the state in 923 after ousting his older brother, Abu al-Qasim Sa'id. He immediately began an expansionist phase, raiding Basra that year. He raided Kufa in 927, defeating an Abbasid army in the process, and threatened the Abbasid capital, Baghdad, in 928 before pillaging much of Iraq when he could not gain entry to the city. Now, you notice that the focus has been on Baghdad up to 928, and then in 930, if we were to believe the Islamic source here, he led the Carmatians' most notorious attack when he attacked and pillaged Mecca and desecrated Islam's most sacred sites. Considering the focus was on Baghdad, it makes you wonder if really what happened was an attack on Baghdad there. Unable to gain entry to the city initially, Abu Tahir called upon the right of all Muslims to enter the city and gave his oath that he came in peace. Once inside the city walls, the Carmatian army set about massacring the pilgrims, taunting them with verses of the Quran as they did so. The bodies of the pilgrims were left to rot in the streets. So, let's see a little bit more. According to Wikipedia again, Abu Tahir's father, Abu Sa'id, was a tribal leader who had initiated the militarization of the Carmatians. Abu Sa'id began preaching against Sunni Islam around 890, after being taught by his mentor, Hamdan Karmat, a native of Kufa, from whose name the Carmatian sect is derived. I suppose the big question is this person a Muslim or Jewish. A lot of this gets hidden under Arabic names. It's very hard to tell. The Wikipedia goes on to say that Abu Tahir thought that he had identified the Mahdi as a young Persian prisoner from Isfahan by the name of Abu al-Fadl al-Isfahani, who claimed to be a descendant of the Sassanid Persian kings. Al-Isfahani had been brought back to Bahrain from the Karmatians' raid into Iraq in 928. In 931, Abu Tahir turned over the state to this Mahdi caliph, said to in fact be a Zoroastrian revivalist with an anti-Arab sentiments. He reinstituted the veneration of fire and engaged in burning of religious books during an 80-day rule. Isfahani also is thought to have some links with established Zoroastrian orthodoxy as the high priest of the Zoroastrians. Isfandir Adarbad was executed by the Abbasid Caliph after being accused of complicity with Abu Tahir. His reign culminated in the execution of members of Bahrain's noble families, including members of Abu Tahir's family. Abu Tahir's mother conspired to get rid of Abu al-Fadl. She faked her death and sent a messenger to call the Mahdi to resurrect her. When he refused, he was exposed as being a normal human, and Abu Tahir's brother Saeed killed Abu al-Fadir after the Mahdi had reigned for only 8 days. Other accounts say, fearing for his own life, Abu Tahir announced that he had been wrong and denounced the al-Isfahani as a false Mahdi. Begging forgiveness from the other notables, Abu Tahir had him executed. Now, what's interesting is this idea that having gained power, he handed over the religious rule to this Mahdi figure. And it reminds us very much of what Benjamin of Tudela describes of the relationship between the exilarch and the caliph, with the exilarch having the political power and the caliph having the religious power. It makes you wonder if Abu Tahir was in fact Jewish, and he simply was rebelling against an earlier Jewish rule. So this could be an inter-family dispute more than anything else. So it goes on to say that the attack on Mecca symbolized the Karmatians' break with the Islamic world. It was believed to have been aimed to prompt the appearance of the Mahdi, who would bring about the final cycle of the world and end the era of Islam. So it could be that this is a Jewish rebellion against a former Jewish plan to set up another religion called Islam, and that the Karmatians had enough of this nonsense and tried to rebel against it. The Karmatians defiled the Zamzam well with the bodies of pilgrims, and the black stone was stolen and taken to the oasis in eastern Arabia known as Al-Hassa, where it remained until the Abbasids ransomed it in 952. According to historian Al-Juwani, the stone was returned 22 years later in 951 under mysterious circumstances. Wrapped in a sack, it was thrown into the great mosque of Kufa in Iraq, accompanied by a note saying, "By command we took it, and by command we have brought it back." The theft and removal of the black stone caused it to break into 7 pieces. The basic shape and structure of the Kaaba has not changed since then. You can see there a picture of the black stone as it appeared in the 1850s front and side illustrations. The sack of Mecca followed millenarian excitement among the Karmatians and in Persia over the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter in 928. Bahrain became the seat of the Karmatian Mahdi Caliph from Isfahan, who abolished the Sharia law. The new Mahdi also changed the Qibla prayer from Mecca to that of fire, a specifically Zoroastrian practice. Some scholars take the view that they may not have been Ismailis at all at the outset, and their conduct and customs gave plausibility to the belief that they were not merely heretics but bitter enemies of Islam. So here is the fragmented black stone. Now AJ Juice says, I believe every word of it, I do. Obviously speaking sarcastically, and then says, and neither should you. It paints over the fact that there was no black stone at Mecca and no Mecca in the first half of the 10th century, and that Zoroastrianism was shown some pre-mortem signs. Isfahan, I should remark, shows up in the Iranian data set, but it remains to be investigated whether it belongs to this episode. They probably attacked Baghdad, not Mecca, which might give us fancy ideas that Mecca and Baghdad might have been separated by a genius stroke of a pen. We actually noticed that in the writings of Benjamin of Tudela. There seems to be a reference to them coming on pilgrimage to see the Caliph, and then there's an insertion of Mecca in the middle of it. And this might fit in with this idea of Baghdad and Mecca being bifurcated conveniently to hide a lot of this. According to Muslim tradition, Bostani the Nasi was confirmed as exilarch by Caliph Ali and put over the three main academies in Surah, Pompadita and Nahardia. It is also said that Caliph Umar gave a daughter of Khosrow II, Dara or Azdadwar, for a wife to Bostani. Should we believe it? Absolutely. Only that it is half the story, and that each actor had a Jewish name and an Arab name, only one of which was handed down to us. Ali was sitting on the throne of Muhammad, and Bostani was on the throne of David. From the beginning of Proto-Islam, the corrupt and genius dual government system was already in place. However, the Bostani lineage, as presented by Tudela, was not the head of the captivity, as it should have been, at least not recognizably. It was among the 10 that are subject to the bosses. Also, while the caliph is recognizable as some sort of a godlike figure, it is too soon to fixate his lineage. Someone extraordinarily important is missing on the table, or is invisible, Ishmael, because Muslim tradition and Jewish tradition appear to be from the same mindset. We are supposed to believe that the last Gaon of Pompadita was Hezekiah bin David, after whom the academy vanished in 1040 AD. How do we square this with Tudela? It appears to be sheer luck that his work survived. Like Rabbi Zakkai, the son of Bostani, the Nasi in Tudela, Hezekiah was the son of David, who was the son of Zakkai. As the Gaonim of Pompadita, they are in Bostani's branch. That the lineage of the Gaonim ended with Hezekiah is just another fabrication. Sure enough, the Jewish Quarterly Review has him live on after he clashed with the fanatical Buyid dynasty. His family branch ended, except it did not. Two sons escaped to Joseph ibn Nagrela in Spain. The Buyid dynasty made the Iranian city of Shiraz their capital, only to later capture Iranian Ray, which then became their capital, Iranian Tahran. In 945 AD, they conquered Baghdad. Does it dawn? The caliphate was under Iranian Shia control for well over a century. Something needed to be done to reconcile the past with the present. Eventually, Pompadita had to disappear in one way or another to survive scrutiny, thus creating a bootstrap paradox. Evidently, while Tudela was at Baghdad, the lineage of Hezekiah sat sound and well at the table of the dual government with the throne of David and the throne of Muhammad. Of course, it merges in the inadmissible data collection of Iranian mosque orientations. Let's have a look at this Buyid dynasty. Um, so the Buyid dynasty was a Zaydi and later Twelver Shia dynasty of Dalamite origin, which mainly ruled over Iraq and central and southern Iran from 934 to 1062, so just prior to the arrival of Benjamin of Tudela. Coupled with the rise of other Iranian dynasties in the region, the approximate century of Buyid rule represents the period in Iranian history sometimes called the Iranian Intermezzo. The Buyid dynasty was founded by Ali ibn Buya, who in 934 conquered Fars and made Shiraz his capital. He received the laqab or honorific title of Imad al-Dawla, fortifier of the state. His younger brother Hassan conquered parts of Jibal in the late 930s and by 943 managed to capture Ray, which he made his capital. Hassan was given the laqab Rukin al-Dawla, pillar of the state. In 945, the youngest brother, Ahmad ibn Buya, conquered Iraq and made Baghdad his capital. He was given the laqab Muiz al-Dawla. So this is the Buyid Amorites from 970. Okay, so the Zaydis is the name of the ruling family, and we can see that Baghdad is the capital city. Fars is the province name, and it covers quite a large area. So you have Kufa and Baghdad there in the western part. You have Wasit, you have Basra, you have Qom, you have Ray, you have Fasa and Shiraz and so forth, and Bam way off in the east. All right, so that is in the 10th century there. So A.J. Juice goes on to say that Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Mahdi is the last imam of Twelver Shia. Because he went into occultation, no time of death is recorded. The occultation is a convenient innovation that finds its motif in the threat that the Abbasid Caliphate posed to the Shia imamate. Instead of real Mahdis, there were the four deputies, the last of which was Abu al-Hassan, Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samari, who died in 941 AD. The idea probably goes further back to the beginnings of Abbasid rule. Ja'ar al-Sadiq, the sixth Imam of Twelver Shia Islam, may have already introduced it. Using frontmen in the risky business of being the CEO of a radical terrorist organization is not exactly brain surgery. Better yet, what does not exist is hard to kill, hence the occultation. The last thing we could accuse these guys of is that they were clowns. After all, their main job was to collect obligatory alms, collecting taxes, the most lucrative job of all ages. People who make money from nothing are considered smart. They were even smarter. They took the money from those who made it from nothing and sent them right back to starting over with nothing. It is genius. And it stands for the oppression of the modern Iranian people through a process that worked for centuries. Stick their noses so deep into the Quran and tradition that their comprehension skills are crippled to the point that they cannot see or hear. Tax them until they cannot stop thinking about the existential need to feed their children. Allahu Akbar. Hoda Bozorg asked, to the extent that they cannot wrap their heads around the fact that by the laws of nature there can be no occult Mahdi, let alone one that ever comes back to this earth. Remember that everyone has but a single round in this game of life. The disease is not limited to the Iranian or the Afghan people. It is so widespread that it guarantees generations to come to live in serfdom under con artists who pretend to represent God. The 14th century Muslim scholar Khaldun explains the requirements for a caliph or an imam. Political laws consider only worldly interests. They know the outward life of this world. On the other hand, the intention of the lawgiver has concerning mankind is their welfare in the other world. Therefore, it is necessary, as required by the religious law, to cause the Mass to act in accordance with the religious laws in all their affairs touching both this world and the other world. The authority to do so was possessed by the representatives of the religious law, the prophets. Later on, it was possessed by those who took their place, the caliphs. Thus, the caliphate in reality substitutes for the lawgiver Muhammad, inasmuch as it serves, like him, to protect religion and to exercise political leadership of the world. The institution is called the caliphate or the imamate. The person in charge of it is called the caliph or the imam. The conditions governing the institution of the imamate are 4: knowledge, probity; 3, competence; and 4, freedom of the senses and limbs from any defect that might affect judgment and action. There is a difference of opinion concerning a 5th condition, that is, Qurayshite descent. Hence, the lawgiver would eventually become an impersonated Muhammad, the caliph. In Khaldun's time, it was not yet settled that the caliph or supreme imam needs to be a Quraysh Jew. In Iran, it appears to still be a requirement on both thrones. The current ones are both Quraysh and thus have or pretend to have Jewish roots. How do we get from a dual throne with Muhammad and David to Narbonne? For that, we need to consult evidence close to the transfer of power from the Umayyads to the Abbasids. And so that's what we're going to be coming to in the next part of this series, looking at how power was transferred from the Umayyads to the Abbasids. Thank you for watching.